There is a letter sitting in the top drawer of my bedside table. It has been there for 3 years. My son does not know it exists, and if things go the way they seem to be going, he will only find it after I am gone. My name is Walter. I am 83 years old, and what I am about to tell you is the one thing I got most wrong in a life where I thought I had gotten most things right. I was not a bad father. I want you to understand that before anything else, because what I am describing is not the story of a man who was cruel or absent or selfish in the ways that are easy to name and condemn. I was present. I was consistent. I provided. I showed up to the things a father is supposed to show up to, and I stayed when other men I knew had already quietly disappeared from their families in one way or another. I coached one season of Little League when Daniel was 9 because he asked me to, even though I knew nothing about baseball and embarrassed myself in front of 30 children on more than one occasion. I drove him to school on the mornings it rained. I sat at his graduation with my hands folded in my lap, feeling something so large I did not have a name for it. I was there. That is what I always told myself. I was there. What I did not do, not once in 54 years, was tell him what I actually thought of him. Daniel is my only child. He came into the world on a February morning when the heat in the hospital was too high and the windows were fogged over, and I stood in a corridor because in those days they did not let fathers into the room the way they do now. A nurse came out and told me I had a son, and I remember standing there in that overheated hallway with my coat still on and feeling something move through me that I had never felt before and have never quite felt since. Not happiness exactly. Something older than happiness. Something that felt like the ground shifting and resettling into a more permanent position. I went in and looked at him, and he was red-faced and furious about being born, which I later came to understand was simply his personality arriving ahead of schedule. He grew into a serious boy. Quiet in the way that some children are quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because they are always watching, always turning things over in their minds before they speak. His mother said he got that from me. She was probably right, though I would not have admitted it then. He was not athletic, which I think secretly relieved him because it meant I could not transfer whatever expectations I had carried from my own youth onto him through a sport. He was a reader. He drew strange, detailed maps of places that did not exist. He asked questions at dinner that made me realize, when he was no older than 11 or 12, that his mind worked faster and more carefully than mine ever had. I did not tell him that. It did not occur to me to tell him that. Where I grew up, and I say this not as an excuse but as an explanation, I have spent considerable time examining. Where I grew up, men did not narrate their feelings about the people they loved. You demonstrated love through action, through sacrifice, through the hours you put in and the things you went without so that your children would not have to. My own father never once told me he was proud of me. Not because he wasn't, I think, but because the sentence would have felt to him like a strange and unnecessary thing to say out loud, like announcing that the sky was present or that the floor was solid beneath your feet. Of course he was proud. Of course he loved me. What was there to say? I carried that into my own fatherhood without ever questioning it. Without ever once sitting down and asking myself whether what I had inherited was wisdom or simply a habit that had been passed down so many times that it had begun to resemble wisdom. Daniel did well in school. He went to university and studied something practical at my suggestion, even though I knew, and he knew, that what he actually wanted to do was something to do with history or writing or both. He did not argue with me about it. That was the thing about Daniel. He absorbed the direction I gave him the way the ground absorbs rain, quietly and completely, and I mistook his compliance for agreement and his agreement for happiness. He built a career that was respectable. He married a woman I liked immediately, which surprised me because I had expected not to like her on principle. They had 2 children who are now, I believe, more interesting than most adults I have ever met. At family dinners, which happened with reasonable regularity over the decades, Daniel and I talked about his work and my health and the news and the grandchildren and occasionally about something he had read. We did not talk about how I felt about him. There was never a silence that demanded it. There was never a moment that announced itself as the right one. Or rather, there were dozens of such moments, and I stood at the edge of each one and then stepped back from it without fully understanding why. When he was about 45, Daniel went through a period I now recognize as a quiet crisis, though I did not name it that at the time. He was restless in a way that was new. He seemed to be asking himself questions that his life was not answering. I noticed. I am telling you clearly that I noticed because I want you to understand that my failure was not one of attention. I saw it. I watched my son moving through his own life with a kind of careful dissatisfaction, and I knew, the way you know things about people you have watched since before they could speak, that part of what he was looking for was something I had never given him. I did not give it to him then either. I told myself the moment would come. I told myself that when the right occasion presented itself, I would say what needed to be said. I told myself he was a grown man who did not need his father's validation, which was simultaneously true, and one of the more convenient lies I have ever told myself. I told myself he knew. That was the one I returned to most often. He knows. Of course he knows. What son doesn't know that his father loves him, that his father is proud of him, that his father considers him the single most significant thing that ever happened in that father's life? Of course he knows. 3 years ago, I was in the hospital for something that turned out to be less serious than it initially appeared, but for about 4 days, neither I nor my doctors were entirely certain of that. I lay in a bed in a room that was too cold, and I thought about Daniel with a clarity that I had apparently required a health scare to produce. I thought about all the dinners and all the drives and all the graduations and all the ordinary Sundays, and I tried to identify one moment, one single moment, where I had looked at my son and said directly and without deflection, "You are the best thing I ever did. You changed the shape of my life by existing in it. I am a better and more complete person because you are my son." I tried to find that moment, and I could not find it. When I came home from the hospital, I sat at my desk for a long time. Then I took out a piece of paper, actual paper, and I wrote him a letter. I wrote everything I had never said in 50 years of being his father. I wrote about the February morning and the fogged windows. I wrote about watching him read at the kitchen table when he was 7 years old and feeling something that I can only describe as awe. I wrote about the dinner conversations and what I had actually thought listening to him. I wrote about the period of restlessness and what I had seen in him then and what I wished I had said. I wrote that he was not an obligation or a responsibility or a duty that I had performed adequately. I wrote that he was the point, that when I look back at my life and try to locate its center of gravity, it is him. It has always been him. Then I folded the letter and put it in an envelope with his name on it and placed it in the top drawer of my bedside table where it has remained for 3 years. I have not given it to him. I have thought about giving it to him many times. I have picked up the telephone with the intention of simply reading it to him and then set the telephone back down. And I genuinely understand that this continued silence at this point is no longer a habit inherited from my father. It is something I am choosing, something I am, for reasons I cannot entirely explain even to myself, unable to stop choosing. Perhaps I am afraid of what his face will do. Perhaps after a lifetime of performing competence and self-containment, I do not know how to sit across from my son and be that visible. Perhaps part of me still believes, despite all evidence, that he already knows. Or perhaps I have simply waited so long that the act of saying it now would require an acknowledgement of all the years I did not say it, and that acknowledgement is the thing I cannot face. What I know is this: that letter is going to outlive me. He will find it in that drawer, and he will read it, and he will learn in my absence what I could not bring myself to give him while I was present. And I do not know whether that will be a comfort to him, or whether it will reopen something that has long since scarred over. I do not know whether a letter from a dead father is better than a silence from a living one, or simply a different kind of the same wound. If you are watching this, and you have something to say to someone, something true and long-held and overdue, I am not going to tell you that you should say it. You already know you should say it. What I will tell you is that the reasons you have for not saying it, every single one of them, will feel very small when the time left gets short. They will feel like exactly what they are. Not wisdom, not restraint, just fear wearing the clothes of habit. The letter is still in the drawer. His name is on the envelope in my handwriting. And my son, who is the best thing I ever did, goes to sleep tonight not knowing that.